Save me, MJ!
What if biggest role Tom Holland ever played wasn't Spider-Man? What if it was just Tom Holland? The version of him you see in interviews, on red carpets, in every single Instagram post. Here's the uncomfortable question. How much of the person you are watching is real? And how much is character rebuilt to survive his fame? Because here's the thing, millions of us are doing smaller version of the exact same, creating a version of ourselves for Instagram, performing fine at work when you are not, smiling through the group chat while quietly falling apart. Tom Holland's story isn't just celebrity gossip, it's a mirror. Stick around because by the end of this video, you are going to understand a psychological pattern so common it probably has a grip in your own life. And Holland's story is the clearest, most public example of where we have gotten. Rewind to before the spider bite, before the six-pack sap, and before the press tour. Tom Holland was just a kid from Kingston upon Thames who liked gymnastics and dance, who got bullied for it, and who found the one place that bullying couldn't reach him, the stage. Psychologists have a name for that happen, the identity formation through performance. When a kid discovers that being someone else earns him safety, approval, even love, his brain quietly files away from lesson performing his protection. That lesson doesn't disappear when the kid becomes a movie star. So when 15-year-old Tom Holland won the role of Spider-Man over hundreds of other actors, he wasn't just getting a job. He was stepping into biggest version of coping mechanism he'd been building his whole life. And that's where the story gets in. Because the coping mechanism was about to be tested at a scale almost no human being on earth ever experienced. Fast forward a few years, Holland is now one of the most photographed young men alive. And he says something in interview that most fans skip right past. He can't walk down a street in New York without being filmed. Every doorstep exit is content. The outside world, the one everyone else gets for free, becomes something he had to perform in. This is where a concept called self-conscious spillover kicks in. Normally, we only feel watched in specific moments, a job interview, a first date. Holland described living in the state permanently. Human nervous system was never built for constant observation. It's exhausting in a way that nothing to do with money or fame being nice problems to have. It's biological core. So what did he do? He eventually deleted social media, not for PR, but because he said it kept dragging the pressure of the outside world into his own house, and he needed to remind himself who he actually was. Sit with that for a second. One of the most famous people alive had unplugged from the internet just to remember his own identity. If that's true for him, what does that say about the rest of us? Scrolling for hours every day, observing everyone's reels. Here is the twist. Most people don't know it wasn't Spider-Man that pushed Tom Holland to his psychological limit. It was a much smaller, much darker show called The Crowded Room, where he played a troubled young man tangled up in the identity and trauma. To prepare, he spoke with the real psychiatrist. He studied real mental health struggles up close, and somewhere in that process, the line between research and personal experience started to dissolve. He described having something close to break down during the filming. At one point, wanting to shave his head just to feel like himself again, physically separate from the character living in his skin. This is documented psychological phenomenon actors called characters bleed. When emotional material you are rehearsing doesn't stay in the scene, it follows you home. It sits with you at dinner, it shows up in the sleep. And this is the plot twist of his whole psychology. The very tool he built as a kid to survive become the someone else. Turned around him become the thing that nearly broke him as an adult. The coping mechanism and the crisis were exact same skill. That's not a coincidence. That's how the most our psychological patterns work. That thing saves you at 7 can quietly cost you at 27. So how do you come back from that? Holland's answer is honestly one from the most useful things come out celebrity culture in years. First, sobriety. Realizing alcohol had quietly become a bigger part of his life than he wanted to admit. And getting sober become less about willpower and more about rebuilding trust with himself. Second, he talks about watching people around him, friends since childhood, lose themselves entirely to the interest, not lose their money, lose their personality, and he made a conscious repeated decision not let that happen to him. Staying close to family, staying grounded in ordinary things like being outside playing golf, just existing without an audience. Here's the psychological principle underneath all of this: identity anchoring. The people who survive extreme pressure, faith, trauma, burnout, etc., whatever version shows up in your life, aren't the ones with no struggle. Quick question for all of you, and I actually want you to answer this in comment. What's your anchor? The one thing that reminds you who you were, everything else is loud. Here's why this isn't Tom Holland's story. Every single one builds a performance self at some point. The version of you at work And the version at family dinners, the version online, and every single one of us risk same thing he almost lost. The line between the mask and the face underneath is getting blurred. Tom's psychology is extreme because his circumstances are extreme. But the mechanism building an identity to survive, then having it to fight to remember who's underneath it, that just being human turned up to maximum volume. So Tom's real psychological arc isn't boy becomes superhero. It's a boy builds a mask to survive. Mask nearly consumes him. Boy has to consciously choose over and over who really underneath is. And wait, before leaving, there is the character who didn't have Tom Holland's support system, who didn't have the anchors, who let the mask completely take over. I'm talking about the Spider-Man. And he honestly his psychology is even more disturbing than what we just covered. If you want to check out this video on right side, see you in that video. Bye bye.